Everybody, boys and girls, how you doing? It is Tuesday night. I am Rich Tesla. This is the HomeLab, Two Guys Tech HomeLab Hour, and episode 22. 22! I have a great show for you, planned for you today. But let's get the fundamentals out of the way first. So, as I always say, this is a show to talk about HomeLab stuff. Talk about the videos that I've created. If you have any questions, this is the place to ask them. What else? We have a Discord that's totally free and available, and that's where we hang out after the show too. That's my first time to mention that. And Brandon is in the back, turning the knobs and making sure that I sound good. And I don't want to wait any longer. I have to admit, yesterday, Monday, was just one of those days. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it was just one of those shit days at work where I was like, it's like a 13-hour day fighting off bad guys trying to take things down, and just, it wasn't fun. And so when I posted the video or posted the announcement for this, it was late in the afternoon. I was like, oh man, maybe I should just punt this. I'm like, no, I can't do that. And I had to call in some backup. So I have a special guest, which you probably already know if you've already read the title. I've got the one and only Tom Lawrence, who is always there to help me. And he's honestly just an awesome dude with a lot of knowledge and experience. So let's get Tom out here. Tom, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Sorry, I was. So I wanted to open up another tab, and I was like, "Hey, I'll open the live stream up." And I'm watching you on the live stream. I'm like, "Oh wait, I'm listening to the wrong one because there's a delay for those that don't know." And so I'm just like, I'm staring, going, "Am I on yet? Oh wait, I'm not on this. So I gotta look at this one."
So I just again it was a long day. I also got to say, just thank you again for hopping on. I enjoy our conversations, and I know the people who are here also really enjoy our conversations. So I appreciate you.
Always a good time. Always a good time. Let me get the chat where I want it. I usually do this ahead of time, so it's exactly where it needs to be.
Well, you were telling me you got distracted by FortiGate memes or Fortinet memes.
Yes.
And that's understandable.
Yeah. It was spontaneous. Someone had posted something I thought was funny, and I have a collection of Fortinet memes because we said shit once, we'll say it again. I'm an internet shit poster, so I will definitely. I am known on LinkedIn to have strong opinions that come with memes. So
they make it so easy too. As a company, it seems like they went, all of their engineers went to college to make these things that bad.
Yeah, I've actually become friends with people who actually work there, and it's been interesting just to learn from the inside. Like it's kind of the problem with Microsoft. There's a lot of really brilliant, talented people at Microsoft, and then there's managers who say, yeah, that secure default you set, that seems like it would make friction for the customer onboarding process. Can you just make that a little less secure, and a little less friction? Yeah, but like this friction is what keeps people from getting themselves in trouble. Yeah, but you should probably turn that down a notch. Like there's a reason the defaults are bad there.
Capitalism wins out every time over security, I guess.
Yeah, it is just kind of weird. But the latest Fortinet one, if you didn't see, and it just really cracked me up because you can't make this one up. FortiWeb is their web application firewall product. Their own branding and claim will help stop OWASP's top 10 vulnerabilities in your web applications. It had a SQL injection problem, so it had a literally unsanitized input leading to SQL injection, and you're like, oh, that's bad. Maybe it was a complicated coding mistake. Oh no, it was trivial. And then on top of that, they're running MySQL as root.
Oh wow.
The product wasn't released until circa 2010, and around 2010, even an amateur Linux person would go, yeah, we don't run SQL as root. So
right, yeah.
2025, Fortinet on their security edge device running SQL as root, which of course meant full account takeover. You pop SQL, you have full privileges, not just MySQL user. And I mean,
in the box,
there's somebody at Fortinet that just let that go, like that ships the product. Yeah, everything just runs as root. It's all right.
You'd think there would be a little bit of oversight, especially on the QA side of things, that like most companies that sell security products have a pretty, well, I should say most, but you expect them to have at least a pretty well built out, like a security process that they go through to test and evaluate and make sure there's not something obvious like that. But, you know, I know that in my life, I have seen plenty of times where the people who develop products, they don't ever develop products with the intention of how someone's going to break those products, right? So it never enters into their lexicon of what to do to kind of to stop, or maybe that's not really good practice, because all they're concerned about is the next PR and their objectives and making sure that the product ships, right? So,
well, I mean, it's interesting because I just don't understand what's going on in some of their heads, because like I could just go to the command line, run top, look at what's running as root, ask questions. Like this is not something that it takes someone who's gone through years of pen testing to go, most of you unskilled people wouldn't have seen this really complicated thing. It's like some of these are some 101s. There's a reason we have an OWASP top 10 list. Look for these obvious things. At least do that. But
that SQL injections also feel like something that most of the world got over not allowing to happen a while ago. So it had to have that. I'm assuming there was a web GUI or something that was available, and they just started shoving SQL commands to it, and it just executed them.
Yeah, I mean, we have tools for fuzzing, and there's occasionally where really complex things are missed because we just don't realize how for example, I don't know if you use Screen Connect. I don't. I've
used it. I know it is. It's
remote control, remote access tool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Been around since I started using it in 2014. I think it was released in 2012. So the company's been around forever. It was acquired by a larger company that's well funded. It actually has gone through. I know the people that have been involved in this gone through real security testing and auditing. Matter of fact, Bishop Fox, a pretty well-known pen testing, software application testing company, has poked at it. Circa 2019, they found some interesting cross-site scripting, but they were poking hard at it. And then in 2024, no one's seen this coming. And everyone who looked at the code couldn't believe how it worked. It's called slash and grab. So they use input sanitization. If you Screen Connect slash, your URL, you put a slash. Mm-hmm. If you put anything after it, it'll get rid of it because it's not proper input. If it's not a valid input, it throws it away. But no one tried this one, put nothing after it. That's why they call it slash and grab. It turns out it would bring you to the setup screen. And then when you run through the setup and next a couple times, you have to get to the point where you do the users and you set up a new user, set up Rich, and then it eliminates the other users. And then you stop there before it sets up the new database. Because now, let's say you have 1,000 computers in there. Now Rich has 1,000 computers that he has access to. You just locked out all the users simultaneously giving you access. So many people got pwned when that came out because they're like, there's no way not to fix the code or someone's not going to see this. So they had to roll it out quick and get it done. But no one's seen that that was from the point release all the way up to like version 24 that we were at, because they started using like year version numbers. But 11 years you could just put a slash and a space after it, and no one had tried that in 11 years. Even Bishop Fox didn't try it, who did some pen testing on it.
Do you think it's no one ever did it, or that the people who did it probably didn't think much of it? Like, that's such a long run to not find something as obvious as that. But I guess maybe you're hiding.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I was flabbergasted when I learned how easy it was.
That's amazing.
Because my friends at Huntress were kind of leading the charge on that. And when John Hammond, I was part of the inside when they showed how trivial it was. I'm like, oh, this is scary. Like, this is bad. Do a write up because you can't talk about this without doing it. And I think John was the one internally that came up with the name. We're going to call it slash and grab when we do the post, because you can slash and grab all these. You just put a slash in a space and you grab all the users.
That's as well named. It's those sort of systems, especially remote access. The level of sensitivity around them anyway probably puts them in a really precarious position, because, like you said, you can't just tell people, right, until there's been plenty of time to get people patched up so that someone out there doesn't get hit. I mean, look at TeamViewer went through a whole bunch of stuff there too, where they're like, it wasn't us. We had nothing. No, And there's like, remember a few years back? Yeah, that was, we got attacked. But what are you gonna do?
There's always nuance to it, so I always give companies the benefit of the doubt. There are definitely really complicated edge tasks, edge events that occur where it was something really complex, but then there's running as SQL as root. Like, what could go wrong there? I hate one of the obvious ones.
That one is like, again, but I have used plenty of FortiGate hardware in the past, and I've, for better or worse, have successfully gotten it out of my organizations. And every time I'm asked, well, why did I do it? All I have to do is wait every couple of months, and there's going to be a CVE of 8 or 9 and be like, here's why. And it's just, it doesn't matter what the products are. It feels like it's just all of them. That's why I think with them, feels like more of a systemic thing than a oopsie once in a while.
An insider had a conversation with them. They claimed to be an insider, or LinkedIn said they worked at Fortinet. I didn't have reason not to believe them. But they talked about how many years he'd been at the company and just how problematic it's become, where there's just a lack of pressure to do the code auditing. It's like, keep working on features. And yeah.
Make sure it ships. We told people when the deadline was, it's the investors know that date, make it happen. Yeah. You see that happen with software and hardware as a whole. That's a pretty reliable thing in the industry, right? It's like, oh, well, management set the dates, marketing put out the materials. You guys don't have a choice. It doesn't matter.
It ships this day.
We'll fix it.
And just put it in a box. Send it out.
Firmware. Right. So and I guess, that's when it comes to security products, you'd really hope that, maybe there's more deference towards the nature of the products versus Call of Duty, right? For example.
Well, there's a good discussion that me and several friends have had, and I don't know if we need to write a book on it or what is the catalyst that changes the industry, but this mirrors, in my history being in Detroit, is the car industry. And people don't realize, unless you've taken the time to read through what happened in the 60s into the 70s, how terrible cars were and how unsafe they were. And famously, Ross Perot, I think it was. It was Ross Perot. Yeah. He wrote a book called, the book is the big deal, Unsafe at Any Speed. And
I remember that. Yeah.
Car companies were told to, hey, you should probably build vehicles that are less likely to injure and kill its passengers, crumple zones, safety belts, and things like that. There was the argument on Capitol Hill of, if you make us put seatbelts in these things, you're going to bankrupt and destroy Detroit. You can destroy the entire automotive industry, and you're going to set America, back forever and economically, blah, 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 blah. Well, it turns out that was all a lie. They just didn't want to do it. But that Unsafe at Any Speed really did it. So I said, the next book we got to write is Unsafe at Any Click.
There you go.
We are at a point where they hand wave away these responsibilities they have with their end user license agreement. If you see, I don't know if you've seen, I'd actually posted some crash test dummies. And you look at it, and it says, we agreed to EULA. You ready to die?
Yes, I saw that one.
It's amusing to me because I feel like that's the status we're at when there's not a punishment for these companies that's particularly severe, but the consequences are. So when there's another CV 9.8 out of another company, they go in, and you could say the hand of the free market, which people will try to say. I'm like, Fortinet stock's doing quite well for CVE 9.8 every other week. It's not fixing the problem at all, because there's essentially a hold harmless in every one of their end user license agreement that stop us from legal repercussions. You look at the CrowdStrike event, which, by the year, happy 1 year CrowdStrike anniversary.
Yeah, you too, if you had to experience that hell.
Was it today? Is it today, or is it? I know it's this week sometime.
Yeah, I can remember the exact date. It's only the experience that's burned into my brain, right? I lost track of time. There's a whole day gone.
Yeah. So, and it's to think about how monumental the news is that Delta is even considering suing them. It's been a year and that lawsuit is still inching its way forward. But think about that. If a car just exploded randomly, sometimes my family doesn't come home. I keep just part of it. That was the accepted thing of the car industry. And now it's that with the software industry with no repercussions. Sometimes we get owned. Sometimes it delays all the flights. It's just kind of a risk. You can't actually sue anyone for their poor choices. You just kind of say, we try not to do that again.
Yeah. It's funny because I know that there's been a lot of effort, especially focused towards, at least a lot of noise, focused towards the home stuff, like the TP links. And somebody just mentioned that in the chat, but the TP links and the D links, about forcing them to support or fix their things instead of just throwing trash out there for super cheap. But in that argument, you never hear them actually talk about the big companies. It's always the consumer level stuff. Yep. And I find that to be kind of an odd dichotomy, that there's there's that separation between, because security is security. Like your mom and dad deserve as much security at home
Oh
as
yeah.
your enterprise does, right?
Yeah, I like it. The UK has some really solid legislation they came out with, I think 1 or 2 years ago, that's been rolling out where there's requirements for devices that are sold there. Now, the good news is most of the things that are sold in the US are also sold in the UK. So there's
Yeah, we
a lot
benefit
of them
kind of, right?
they're
Yeah,
forcing themselves in compliance and they're not going to
right.
be not compliant in the US market. For example, they have to require auto updates. They have to re- disclose how many years of support. There's a lot of little nuance in those rules,
Hmm.
but it's actually good policy. And I'm hoping eventually we get some of that and some legal ramifications around the companies. But TP Link is not. I see people talking about it in the comments, and it's you know. I've been trying to do some research on this. TP Link, for example, you have to read between the lines. They're very litigious. There's a reason
Oh,
they're a
really?
big company, and they do a lot to obscure things. They are no longer at the pwn to own competition because they wouldn't
Hmm.
fix the flaws that they're found. But you can't get the pwn to own people to really say it publicly. They just go, yeah, they don't show up no more. They're not here no more. And one of the things when TP Link was facing being banned here in the US, if you remember, that was breaking news probably
Right.
6 months ago. There's enough campaign donations that it's not only not news, quietly. If you're familiar with how CVEs are done, you have to
Hmm.
you can become a CNA or CVE numbering authority. Guess who got to be a numbering authority?
Oh, oh, seriously.
Yeah, TP Link became a numbering authority. They did not do any press releases. This is really quiet fanfare. I posted about it on LinkedIn, but I really couldn't find much information about it other than they did it. Now, I once again leaned on my smart friends over at Huntress because they also are a CNA. And one, I learned the process is not as hard as you think to become a CNA. But
Okay.
second, they confirmed a couple things that I thought was the issue. When you're a CNA of your own product, which by the way, you can be, which seems like a rule violation, turns out it's not. If you were
Conflict
to
of
find a
interest for
flaw in
sure,
TP
right?
Link, you have to submit you, even though Huntress is a CNA, they cannot issue a CVE for someone else's product if that company is also a CNA. So the reason my whole premise for why they did this, and my friends all agree with me on this, they became a CNA so they can triage all their own things. And that way, when security researchers try to get a CVE against them, it gets hung up in their own process because it has to be the final issuing unless you can prove that they're neglecting it, which you have to go to the board and you have to do some steps. You can hold up the CVE process and announcing it. So, yeah.
You know, I mean that sounds like at a minimum a conflict of interest, right? Like, give me a
Oh, yeah.
break. But
Turns out the rules allow it.
yeah, then I mean, it's some pretty bad rules. But it, I got to ask myself though, like, is all of that effort on their part less money and less effort than just fixing their crap? Because it has to be, right? I mean, because I mean, you assume that it's a soulless corporation that makes a business decision based on money and time, right? Those the actual commodities that they work in. So I'm guessing that running your own CNA and just killing the process is a lot cheaper than actually using engineering time to fix your products and maintain them.
Yeah, I
But
mean, you figure good engineers are not easy to come by, and it's not even a money thing. It's just they're hard to find. There's a lot of engineers, but people who are really talented at it can be very challenging to find. You have to have a good corporate work environment. They're usually people who aren't about the pay. They're about, I want to work at a place. I mean, they have to get paid a decent amount. They're not going to
sure.
work for low wage, but the work environment is a big factor for them, and it's not easy to attract some of that talent out there. It's kind of a, even us finding good technicians, as you know, or people you may have worked with, you
Right.
know the challenge that can be. It's like, this is hard.
Yeah. And I mean, and admittedly, every business, every location in the world has like different degrees and levels of talent. It still feels like it's got to come down to a
Yeah,
financial decision though. And it's what
somebody,
other
yeah,
reason would it be?
and some executive is really leaning on the politicians. Buying politicians is cheaper than tech, and buying techs or employing techs. And
Sure.
maybe they're right. I that they operate at an economic level that I don't, so I don't necessarily completely know. I mean, I've heard you can buy Congress critters pretty cheap. So someone told me that's the saddest part you'll learn about is not that they can be bought, but how little they can be bought for.
Yeah. Sadly enough, I believe that 100%.
Yeah, someone had some a stat that blew my mind for investing. It was specifically around medical. That was what they're talking about. But the ROI on the lobbying groups for medical changes, the profit gained versus lobbying spent, 3,000% ROI. It was by far the best way to, like, if you were just looking from an economic standpoint, the best way to make more money in the medical industry was to spend money on lobbying that changed laws in your favor, because the ROI, it was really focused around the drug companies, was way better than any other investment they do. How little they spent and the amount of return they got was that big. It may play that way for some of the tech companies too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, it always kind of comes back to what's your return on investment for your dollars spent, and I don't like the idea of knowing that our that maybe theoretically speaking, the people who make the laws are that easily bought.
Yeah. So, anyways, we've wandered off the HomeLab topic.
Yeah.
Please throw some HomeLab questions, folks, to roll us back into that. I got no love for TP-Link, but I certainly don't mind talking about a lot of other HomeLab things, virtualization, and Wendell just did a video on a data center. I will.
Yeah,
you watch that
I haven't
video?
watched. I haven't watched it yet. I saw it pop up, and I haven't watched it yet.
It's pretty cool. I mean, not exactly HomeLab, except for one little part that might be interesting to people. Some of their orchestration tooling is Proxmox, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I know that in my own like professional day job, I brought up a small Proxmox cluster to run some poor man VDI stuff, and it's been fantastic. Do vendors connect to it? I mean, it's not what I run the enterprise on, but you know, it really solves a lot of problems. So I can see a lot of people using that for their orchestration or their test environments and that kind of stuff for rolling into wherever their final landing.
Yeah. I'm still bullish on XCP-NG, and I got no hate for Proxmox or anything like that, but because we're doing some more commercial projects I've been working on lately with XCP-NG and some pretty big companies. One of them I'm excited about because when the dual data center failover I'm setting up to be able to have, they have a 10 gig fiber link between the data centers. They're doing regular replication of all the VMs, and we're setting up so the entire data center can flop over to the other one on a relatively fast basis. So it's kind of cool. And it's all XCP-NG with, I did a video of how it can be done. The video is also an explainer to pitch them on how it could be done. And now we're in the phase of, oh, that's cool. Let's put this together.
Let's
now,
do this.
Yeah, it's the client's really liking a lot of it. We've had some bugs in between, mostly related to switching and some of the fabric problems. We're sorting those out now, because this is all 25 gig systems, all in each side of the data center, and 10 gig links between the data centers. So,
are they physically separated? They must be like a metro.
Yeah,
separate buildings at least, or separate areas.
Oh yeah, they're physically. I forget how many miles apart they are.
Yeah,
but it's pretty cool to have a nice 10 gig. I mean, that's nice when you have a budget. My budget's a 10 gig link between there.
Yeah, absolutely. I do actually have a HomeLab question that has been actually one that came up in a previous conversation over, a live stream, and one that I wanted to talk to you. I don't know if you saw, is either last week or a few weeks back, Intel had just announced their most recent data center GPU, and it was, a solid 500 watts. And it was incredible. It's like, in terms of technology, single socket, 500 watt TDP. And one of the guys when we were talking about it was like, what does this mean for us in the data or in the HomeLab? And so I wanted to get your take on let me frame it first, because I want to make sure that, it's not just like, what do you think? Like, we're seeing just the standard CPUs that are going into businesses and data centers as being 500 watt, 3 to 500 watts at full power. Granted, when they spin down, they're a lot more efficient than that. But they're sitting with power supplies that are 20, 30 amp, right? So you get in a situation where, depending on what they're doing, you can't even power that in a HomeLab anymore. So it kind of just like the power, the temperature, the thermals that they create. Like, what do you think this means for 3 to 5 years down the road, when like the typical people will be picking these things up because they want the PCI lanes, they want the RAM, right? And they can get them for a song now. Do you think it's the end of enterprise hardware in the HomeLab?
I actually feel that isn't the end. The end started a little while ago, because
really? Oh,
yeah, I'm really thinking the mini PCs. I'm seeing more love for the mini PC stuff for a lot of reasons. I'm not saying there's not the niche crowd. There's not the the people who do have those servers, who have my friend Mike, I've showed some of the stuff on, I'm doing some videos with him. I mean, his home lab slash actually uses it for some production stuff, but it's in his house, requires like an extra big mini split because his house does not, he has dedicated AC for it and everything because it's so many watts. I forget how many kilowatts he pulls, but he has symmetrical 10 gig fiber at his house.
Wow.
So there's always going to be those people, and everything's 240 because that's the best way to get efficiency out of it. But I'm seeing, and I like it myself, the massive trend towards these mini PCs where I'm able to get some really good performance out of them. AI is kind of this weird niche thing right now because it's so GPU dependent. But I figure 5 years from now, we're going to be able to start seeing mini PCs that in 5 years rival what we see today with some of those large NVIDIA. So I really think there's just going to be a bigger push towards it. They're thermally more efficient. They don't ramp up as much, but wow, the performance on them is really amazing. Now, granted, they don't necessarily have the PCI lanes, but I think there's going to be different ways we're able to do things to overcome that. Look at how cool external GPUs are now over like a Thunderbolt and things like that. Like, who would have thought that there was enough in a little cable to put an external GPU? Was not even a concept, really. It was like a napkin drawing. Like, we could put the GPU outside the laptop. No, you can't. I mean, in theory, that looks cool in some cartoon.
Right.
But here we are actually going, hey, this is something doable. So I actually think some of it's going to be like the enterprise hardware. I don't think the secondary market's going to be as big. I think with these mini PCs just going crazy, that's where more and more people are going to go. I would love to see that same concept and design of the mini PC, like the B-Link form factor and all these little ones, minis forums I see people talking about, but in 1U short depth rack mounts, or even the mini rack mount method, because that would be kind of cool. So I'm kind of thinking that's where we're going with it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I just built this Franken NAS a couple weeks back too, and it was based on a minis forum mini PC, and I just used the Oculink port on it. By the way, if you call it Oculink, the internet will tear you apart. So don't do that. Don't do that. It's just a little professional advice for you.
It's Oculink.
Yeah. So I get that. And I have to always remember to tell myself, like, I need to separate my emotional connection with it, because professionally,
you love the big hardware too.
I grew up with iron. Right. Yeah. Like, how could you not want that stuff? That stuff is cool. So I agree with you that those main PCs are getting there. It just feels like you have to have more of them. I mean, granted, still, price wise and power wise, it still ends up being better in the end. But like, you really need to start looking at systems that are like Kubernetes, or you're using clustering to really get the full power of all those boxes together, instead of where you can throw one giant box with one giant CPU and call it a day, right? So there's differences there.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see mini forums kind of leading the charge on this too. 10 gig integrated, upgradable memory in these, and of course framework getting in the game too. That's interesting. I haven't really looked at our desktop, but I have a framework laptop sitting over there, and I really like it. Sorry, I got the hiccups.
No worries.
But,
perfect timing.
Yeah, perfect timing for that. But as we get these where they're more expandable, and maybe they have 4 8 RAM slots in them, because those little SODIMMs are small enough where you can still fit them in a mini form factor. Now I can do quite a bit on one. RAM is almost always the limiting factor when you're virtualizing. It's rarely, with limited exception, unless you have specialized workloads. But for most home users' workloads, we have a bunch of VMs running a bunch of random things, but none of them are really pushing the CPU that hard. But once we start getting all these VMs, we're like, crap, I need more RAM. Almost always that is the thing. 100%. And that's where that is the big limitation. I can't put a terabyte of RAM in a mini PC. That is not at all on the roadmap, but I think we'll get there quicker as the demand rises up. And think about that. If you put a mini PC in a form factor of a 1U using, smart little laptop RAM, the short ones, you could fit a lot of sticks in there. And that might make a reasonable single server that's pretty high performance.
Right. And I hope that we, on the memory side of things in the small form factor, I think what we really need in terms of making that more viable is, I'm sure you've seen the LP cam those LP cam memory modules they flush mount to the motherboard, and They are easier to cool, easier to maintain. I know there's a couple competing versions, so there's not really like this is the standard, but something to get as close to just slamming DIMMs onto the motherboard as possible to get as much of it as possible. Things like that would be the answer, but we're still shoving SODIMMs and everything, which is kind of a legacy form factor at this point, right? So, DIMMs, yeah.
The real answer is better coders. We do all this in assembly. We need 1/10 the RAM we use today. Problem solved.
Yeah, we just use ChatGPT to write that in assembly and then just hit the compile button and we're done.
Yeah. I always appreciate, because I follow like Steve Gibson and some of the tools he does. And one of the things I always appreciate about it is the fact that he writes things in assembly. And when you write in assembly, it is absolutely minuscule and tiny. And I think that's so cool. From we're used to dragging in, hold on, we need node. I only need one module node, but here comes 600 megs of node.
Here it is. Yeah, exactly.
And modern development, I get it that it's opened it up so more people can be developers and we can have more things, but it's also, man, if you go back and what was that book called, like the Masters of Doom, and when people had limitations on the hardware, so there was no such thing as just, there's plenty of memory in this thing, I don't have to be tight with my coding. Those earlier days, you were trying to inch everything out. Any of the diving you do into the early days of PC and retro PC is fascinating. Of like, this is it. We're manipulating CPU registers. How are we going to reuse a section of the screen in a sprite? Because this is our limitation, is this many kilobytes of memory. That's it. We kind of got lazy on there. And I kind of think, like, how would things change? Could we somehow, or maybe someone needs to invent the language that allows the developers all the fancy tools, but then the binaries actually get, it sounds easy. I know it's very complicated problem, but it definitely solves all the memory problems if everything was that much more efficient.
Right. Yeah. It actually reminds me of a story I heard once from a Microsoft engineer who worked on the print spool functionality in Windows, and they were coming across an issue with the print spooler that they needed to fix, and it was causing issues, and they wanted to patch it. But the corporation at the time had put limitations on how big their component of the operating system could be in kilobytes, and said, this is your entire budget right here. And so it forced them to have to rebuild and rethink how they were going to do the coding, because they couldn't be given, I mean, they could have asked for more, but it would have to go to a committee, and then the committee, they have to sing for their supper to prove it, because any bloat to the operating system was detrimental to the OS overall. And so you really had to prove your worth, why you needed the thing. So, I mean, that's not how it necessarily is these days. Look at how big Windows 11 is as an install, but just the fact that you might be putting revert pressure on somebody to be like, you know what, see what you can do with what you got, and see if you can actually make something better, fix your problems, be more efficient with thinking outside the box. And I agree with you. We don't probably do that as much these days, because
no, matter of fact, what people may have forgotten, or maybe didn't dive deep into it, but when DeepSeek R1 came out, everyone's like, whoa, how'd they do it? And my favorite explanation, she's very technical, is there's a YouTube channel. She's a great researcher. She also does a lot of assembly stuff, is Laura Wired. And she did an absolute wonderful explainer. It is complicated. It is not necessarily something you may grasp on the first thing, but the too long didn't watch of her video of what happened with DeepSeek was they just went raw. They went like, well, we don't have access to the GPUs that these folks at ChatGPT or other large American companies have. We have these previous ones. What if we drop down to the lower level language and really wrote this in a highly optimized way? And it turned out it saved an incredible amount of money, which also had a head scratcher for me. OpenAI is literally solving the problem with money, not skill. They're just beating away at it. It puzzled me more than anything else just to step back and go, you had a company that has now, by the way, spent more money, because they're $8 billion a year and they're burning 4 of it. They're losing $4 billion a year. That is a number that no company has ever lost before, and then asked for more. I mean, just companies have lost and gone out of business for far less, but they keep asking for more. But no one stopped and said, instead of just brute forcing this, because we have an almost unlimited bank account to just keep buying more, what if we optimize it? And at the scale they operate at, it would have been interesting. But to think this small company made a model more efficient, answered better and everything, just because they took the time to really get down to the low level CUDA language that the cards write, which is basically they went to like the equivalency of assembly on the cards. And that's how they were able to gain incredible numbers of efficiency. She even recreates some of the code in her video of how they did it and shows the efficiency gains. Because one of those things, once it got reverse engineered, it's like, it was cool as eye opener. Some people go, wait a minute, I don't work at ChatGPT, but why aren't you guys doing it this way? This is the way we all thought you were doing it. And now someone just, ate your lunch and caused a big stir in the industry. Now we're going, you guys aren't doing that? You just throw money at the problem?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You have money to throw at the problem.
Disruption is so fast now that mid-disruption, they're being disrupted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really fascinating. So I think there's going to be, and maybe, and I'm not predicting any time economic failure, but if the country does go through an economic contraction, that's when people get creative. And that's when people go, well, people can't just buy the stuff anymore. What if we took what we have and start writing it better? What if we started optimizing it? When there's no constraints, people get lazy. It's as simple as that. It's
for sure.
To extrapolate a little further, it's one of the reasons sites like Twitter in the early days took off. You have to say something smart and witty, and you can only use this many characters. That constraint push creativity. Vine, any of these early video platforms that said you can't just babble on like we have for 36 minutes. You have to be compelling in 60 seconds. So you get really good at it. Or wasn't Vine like 20 seconds or something? Vine
it was super, super short. Yeah.
But there were some really good people that rose to the top because they lived within the constraints of, I have to get your attention and compel and engage you in 20 seconds. That's it. Yeah. So I really have to think hard. You spend more time thinking. It's that, what is that old line? This letter would have been shorter if I had more time.
Well, since you brought up the AI, let's dig into that a little bit, because you and I actually had conversations in the past where, in the beginning, it felt more like a parlor trick, and I want to know if you still feel that it's still a parlor trick. And on top of that, what are your thoughts on, because you're a successful businessman, the MSP is fantastic. You see these other businesses now that are like, well, we're gonna get rid of at least a half or a third or all of our software engineers, and we're just gonna use the AI to do it. Do you think that it's actually able to do this, or do you think this is just a thinly veiled way to cost cut and force people out of a job? You're like, oh no, we're just using technology that's automatic, right? What's your thoughts?
I think the big challenge AI faces. So if you build a SaaS company, they call it the hockey stick growth. There's a lot of effort to build the company. There's a lot of effort to get it to market. There's a lot of effort to write the code to make it work, but it scales differently. Facebook and all these social media sites are exact examples of this. We have this long growth, and then we have the hockey stick when we start making a bunch of money and the revenue skyrockets up. And the reason it's able to do that is because there's a fixed cost in writing the software once. I wrote the game once. This is why game developers can have wild success. I wrote it once, and every time you buy it, it doesn't cost me more. Even if I'm running online servers to host this game as a collaborative effort, the scaling isn't there. It's a lot of expense to build the server, but 100 users and 1,000 users and 10,000 users don't cost you that much more per user. AI is backwards. The unit economics are different. So one of the big challenge AI has is they're constantly losing money because they're trying to gain users. But for each user they have, and ChatGPT has said this many times, we're losing money on users, and especially the heavy users. They failed everywhere to try to charge people more than that, $20 a month. So they have a real unit economic problem where infinite growth isn't easy for them, because the growth is directly proportional to how much load it puts on the service to generate this. And everyone wants the promise. It's called capitalism for a reason. We value the capital, not the people. So how do we get it cheaper? Well, we want to eliminate people. People are a pain in the butt. They require like rules and health insurance and HR departments and all those things, and computers don't. So computers are an efficiency multiplier to become a bigger company. Well, I love in concept, this always works. There's a book you can read called Blood in the Machines. It's the history of the Luddites. It's when we first started making what was that called? The ginny mills and the different cotton pullers and all the
you
other
mentioned that before. Yeah.
made textile manufacturing easier. Well, that was that hockey stick. We built the machine once, we don't have people, and now this one machine cranks out all these linens. They're hoping to see the same thing again, but it doesn't line up the same. You don't build it once and then just get to use it. It doesn't have those same economics. So I'm still not sold on AI be replacing people. I think it's a great enhancement tool. It is a cover band. Cover bands are cool. I can't always see my real band, but it produces sound that kind of is like them. It's kind of original. It's enough that I'm going to go have fun with my friends, but it's really not the original. And I always feel that way because people ask if I use AI to write because I read a lot of LinkedIn posts, like use AI to write. I'm like, no, I'm going to do a video soon on showing how I use it to write things and how bad it is at things. Like I ask it questions. And I'm like, I always do this thing. I'll do a little write up and I'll say, give me some meme suggestions. And it's terrible. I've never used any of its suggestions. I'm always like, this is so bad. Now I use it for things like I am not grammatically, I can talk well, but I do not spell well. And I am not the most grammatically right. I think someone corrected my grammar somewhere here in the chat already once. He or saw, whatever it is.
Yeah,
like
I
said it wrong. I get those things wrong. So that is the biggest helper. It does make me sound a little smarter.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. Like I will admit all day long that Grammarly has become my friend. It fixes all my mistakes. And I mean, I don't necessarily call Grammarly an AI, even though they'd probably try to label themselves that because that's what sells. But I mean, those sort of tools, that's exactly perfect for what it's for. It just, the reason why I do everything by hand is because, well, it's two reasons. One, I feel like what comes out lacks soul. It might be fake and really like, it has this false sense of like intimacy, and it does a good job of like emulating human, but I feel like I can see right through that stuff. And I imagine there are many people who can't. I sure hope that people can see through it.
There's different ways to think about it, especially niche down to coding where it's really popular. And I hate this claim that AI writes some percentage of our code. All these big companies have made that claim, but anyone who uses it, and people have now spoke out against, even people who work for some of these big companies, like, that's not exactly true. The way it works, it's not. I like the analogy. I'm trying to remember where I heard this one, but I'll at least say it wasn't mine. It wasn't AI generated this one either. They said, if you're trying to use one of these ones that write all the code, the concept is it's like ordering an Uber. An Uber driver just drives you somewhere. You just say, I just want to get to this destination, and it vibe codes my way to the destination. But that's really not what happens. The real people using it, it's more like, hey, you got this person, you're driving, but you got someone sitting in the passenger seat that can give you directions and look things up. Hey, can you find me the nearest restaurant? And it looks at what you're doing and does that. Now, what they did in someone has really talked about these statistics. There's a couple good interviews I've heard where they're claiming it's written by AI, but what it really is, Copilot suggesting when you start doing it, it's auto-completing because there are constantly reused snippets of code. There are common functions that you may need. I need to build a button. I need to build a little menu that gives me some keys. Is there any value in me writing that? I did this like in my early days of programming. I wrote some little menus with buttons, or is it vibe coded where I say, please give me 4 option menu buttons, make the modal window look like this. Cool. Yeah. Did that really write the code? That's not the hard part of coding. So there's this balance that you have to find on what the claims are and what the reality is. I think it enhances people who really understand it. I feel I understand it. Not going to call myself an AI expert, but because I understand the context of what I want out of it, I'm able to use it to be more efficient. I'm not good at writing regex. You know what AI is great at regex. I would not say it wrote something for me, but when I give it a string, I'm like, please parse this and give me the regex I need. Fantastic. It has saved me again from learning regex.
Yeah, I mean, I've used it for I would say that the only vibe coding that I've been doing is really simple, like, I could use a Python script to do this really small thing really quick. And it is just brilliant for that. But I don't by any means think that my little 15, 20 lines of code that does a thing is anywhere in comparison to an entire full stack of like an operating system with all these nuances and different components. And that's what I feel like is missing from a lot of these executives who are up there saying that they're firing all their staff. Is like, but you can do like you're saying, Tom. You could make it, put a button in there. You could ask it like, well, I need a function that does this. Oh, I think you should use this function.
Yeah.
That's a big difference than saying write an entire full stack from top to bottom. Make sure that it's sound and secure and following best practices, right?
Yeah, one of the things, there's a great interview that Ed Zitron did explaining where they fall short. Ed Zitron's been very vocal about AI and giving a lot of good details. He's a really interesting journalist. I follow him. He's a little ranty, but sometimes his rants are hysterical. So take him with a grain of salt. But his interview with one of the programmers was really enlightening to talk about where the real problems are when you're writing something big. So you want to write modules. Let's say we have a call to the database and I'm going to query this. I'm going to write this as a separate module. Well, later I'm coding and, I want to query the database again, but I want to query something different. And what AI will consistently do, and he says even the new Claude code, et cetera, will do this. It starts writing another new module to query the database. Next thing you know, you have 4 separate modules. It understands the concept that this should be put into a separate function, so it's dedicated, but it doesn't always realize it loses the script and doesn't reference it back. So people who have vibe coded these applications have 4 separate modules accessing the database and things like that. And you're like, well, which one is it called? Why is it called this one here and this one here? And that keeps spiraling out of control as you build these little modules. So it kind of breaks that concept in coding. A lot of it has to do with the context windows. I know Google Gemini claims these incredibly large context windows, but that just isn't the case. They still aren't there on large context. And when you talk about coding, that's exactly what it is on a large scale project, not a Python script that we need to, sort through and parse some data that we have.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I just hope that that the people in charge, the business people are fully aware of that, because I feel like we're headed towards this weird, and it's also, I still think that there's a big economic pressure thing going on that people are talking about. Like here in Oregon, we just saw that Intel for what it's worth, right? It's gone through a lot, but 2,500 people are like, no, we're going to shrink. So, I hope that it's not just a thinly veiled way to use it as a headcount reduction thing, and they be like, look, this is technology. We're staying ahead of things and not just like tightening our belts and doing that kind of stuff. So,
well, and at these large companies too, if you're ever in those executive roundtables, you have people who ask this question very abruptly: what is my company missing? Are we missing? Is, we're on top of the world today, but everybody knows nobody's on top of the world forever. What did I miss? Is my competitor using something right now that I should be using, and I'm just going to get blindsided by it? Yellow Pages didn't become Google. And so there's a lot of that goes on. Like, what is the technology? And is this thing I see in the news every day, especially compounded by the fact that I mentioned $8 billion raised? You're like, wait a minute. If it's raising $8 billion, it's got to be good, right? Right?
That is truly stunning. Like the thought of those piles of money just disappearing. That's stunning.
Yeah. So they're pushing it because they don't want to miss out, but they're also struggling for a use case. Goldman Sachs came out hard this year saying AI wasn't worth the investment. They had a 15-page investment report on AI. And I was like, wow, Goldman Sachs. And I had shared that on LinkedIn. I think I titled it something along the lines of Goldman Sachs, a group of investors that would kick puppies if they thought kicking puppies made money, has decided AI is not making money. I have no love for them people, but I will respect the fact that they are shrewd investors. So I'm not saying that they're great, but I'm saying they see it and they know in economics. I feel better than me. I'm a tech nerd who incidentally has some economic knowledge that I mostly use ChatGPT for. So I can't validate how good it is.
Well, I want to change the subject before we run out of time, because I try to like to just keep these an hour. But I just saw, and I'm sure you saw it too, because I think it was in your mailbox as well, that IX Systems has now officially rebranded themselves TrueNAS.
Which saves me so much time explaining what IX Systems is.
Right? Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of it that way. But do you, other than like aligning what people, because people don't really know who IX Systems is or was, I guess in this case, unless they were businesses who were doing business buying their hardware, then it was like, I'm using TrueNAS and it's from IX Systems. So last time, I think you and I had a casual chat where I'd mentioned that I was kind of feeling a little down on TrueNAS because of, or at least the community version, because of all the changes that are really,
Yeah,
I mean,
breaking
affected
changes.
me. Yeah. And so I was going to ask you, like, how are you feeling about it now? Do you still feel good and bullish about it? Or, I mean, I've cooled
Yeah,
down a little bit. So,
I feel like they're ripping the Band-Aid off and just fixing stuff, which is good, but
mhm,
it's still tough. I mean, I never liked him as a virtualization platform,
right.
and so it maybe because I wasn't as directly impacted, and I don't want to say I told you so, but I did tell people. I have been saying it for a while, quit using it as it's not a virtualization platform. Go get
Yeah.
Proxmox, go get XCPNG. Literally,
Right.
there's anywhere else you should run your virtualization besides this thing. But I don't know. I actually two things. I love the fact that they're being so much more transparent with the TrueNAS Tech Talk. Chris
Mhm.
and Chris on that
Yep.
podcast. Definitely go give it a listen. They
Absolutely.
have been absolutely telling you why they make the decisions. And I so wish they'd been doing this years ago. Like these little, why we made these decisions, I think helps the community understand. You're hearing it from the people that make the decision, why they made the decision. You're not
Right.
speculating and filling in the gaps. So I think it's worthwhile that they're doing that. I think the name change is just why not? It's been this for so let's make it all one name. So there's going to be probably some people conspiring that they're going to charge for it or something like that. And they don't have any plans for that. Chris Moore is
Right.
an open source guy from start to finish. I mean,
Yeah.
he's great. He's the head of project development for those who know who Chris Moore is, but
Yeah.
I
I've met
don't
him.
worry
He's a
about
nice
it too
guy.
much.
Yeah, I know. And like I said, for a while there, especially after the last few big changes that came in Fangtooth, I had kind of, I mean, I become more reluctant to how I look at my storage. And whereas again, I didn't run virtualization in it because I just didn't need to. I've got stacks of hardware to do it, but like the Kubernetes, the Docker stuff, a lot of the like just the wholesale changes has made me kind of look at it and go, this is a storage platform. Rich, don't forget that it's a storage platform first, and all the bolt-ons are extra if you want to use them. But so I've dialed that back just to kind of compensate for that personally.
Yeah. I seen a question here that I like, but I will address it. What's the likelihood 45 drives will buy Axe Systems? And I would say 0. 45
Yeah.
Drives is a really interesting company, and they're just going in a very different direction with how they build things. CX System is very traditional in the way they build hardware. Not that that's a bad thing, but 45 Drives is a way different animal. They are far apart from the way they do things is the best way I could describe it.
Right. Yeah, and not to mention that IX doesn't make their own gear. They don't have like they're an ODM user, right? So they're on Supermicro or they're on Gigabyte. I think it's another one of their hardware platforms.
Yeah, well,
And
they're interesting because some of it they do, the physical like server, they work very hand in hand to build the frame, I guess you could say, the case, if you will.
sure,
But then there's a ton, like their OEM provider being Supermicro for all the internal components. So, because no one's actually manufacturing their own board. So it's just a very different way they do it because they're very tightly. I mean, when you take apart like an MX50, and I think you've taken these apart too, right?
yeah,
Yeah. That's highly customized hardware.
right.
For that. It's
2
extremely-
trays and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Extremely proprietary versus Protocase is the side of 45 Drives. It's the same CEO for both companies. Doug and another guy own both companies, but Protocase is the physical. They make all kinds of cool stuff. I got a video I've never finished editing. I should edit about their factory tour. But
Oh yeah,
yeah, I've done the whole factory tour. It's amazing. They do so many cool. They're making a coffee roaster, and it was cool. They build these there's so many weird one-off things they got going on there, and some of it I can't completely talk about. But let's just say there are large labs out there, very very big science institutions where large sciencey things happen. Maybe they go hang out and even judge a couple rovers once in a while. If you're wondering who they rubbing shoulders with, look up 45 Drives rover competition judging, and you'll go, oh, that's who they hang out with. Anyways, they build lots of neat stuff, but their whole concept is not trying to get to the level of the motherboard. They're like, we just build the case, and then we build incredible good support and solution design from a storage standpoint with a heavy leaning on Ceph. Ceph is their bread and butter for that because I can't name anyone else as good at Ceph than them. Hands down, I can't name the next company down that's like Ceph experts.
Yeah, I agree. They certainly established themselves as And not only that, the amount of stuff that they're sharing with the community, their how-tos, the knowledge around stuff. I don't know of anyone else who's short of maybe Red Hat, but I don't think Red Hat even provides that much.
Yeah. Yeah. The top to bottom, Doug really likes giving it all away. No secrets. Everything's open source, from the designs to the 3D prints they do. Just all the stuff. He's really, really big on that aspect. And I like that. They're really trying to use open source as much as possible internally. They're really trying to push to get away from Microsoft, even though they have, I mean, they're like a 500 something person company. So there's a lot of integrations they have with the machining and tooling that's not easy to move to open source. And yeah.
Oh yeah. Knowing what it's like to try to run and support a physical manufacturing company, I wish them the best. They've probably got lathes and 5-axis mills that are running Windows XP, baby. And they're not going to spend another $1 million if all they need is to change the computer out. So
they have some really cool, some of their machines. That's why the videos take so long to edit. I have so much footage of Doug. Doug knows the details of every machine. We spent 3 hours together filming. It is one of those, like, I need to sit down for 3 days and try to edit this.
Right.
But some of these machines were like $2 million each, 2 and 3 million a machine. He has it has its own tool changing systems. Like, it is, the tolerances they have to meet for some of the stuff is incredible. Not related to 45 drives, just the other milling stuff they do.
Right. Yeah, that's and I think that just to add to that, I feel like they're different verticals, and I think, like you mentioned, their philosophies make them so that they probably wouldn't ever be one merged company. They just view the world a different way, and but it's by them as possible. But Tom, we're getting close to that time. I every time we get to hang out, I know that the audience, and especially me, just enjoy the hell out of talking to you. So I appreciate you hopping on.
Always fun.
Yeah, I will say, I don't need to say this because everybody who's here right now knows who Tom Lawrence is, how to get to him. But if this is the first time you've seen Tom Lawrence, I don't know where you've been, what rock you've been under, but Tom, you are everywhere. You're on LinkedIn. You're on obviously YouTube. I've noticed that you're not on Blue Sky though.
I am.
Or are you? Because I tried to search you. I did a little post this afternoon. It's like Tom Lawrence Tech, and I'm getting random Tom Lawrence's. Like,
I need to. We've got some automation tied to it. I think. Yeah, Blue Sky's linked on my Lawrence. If you go to lawrencesystems.com at the bottom, I have everything.
I'm gonna have to.
I even have my Signal linked on there for people who want to message me in Signal. Because some people are like, I trust none of these other platforms. I only trust Signal, and I'm fine with that. The only thing I don't list on there is my email address, and it's because I never get spam on Signal, so I don't mind direct communication with me. Email, that gets spam. So that's the only reason that one's on there. But yeah, I'm easy to find on there. I'm even on Steam. So as I've been trying to get more into gaming. I haven't been playing any multiplayer games that I want to, but I've been Ghost of Tsushima I've been really putting some time in that one lately.
That's awesome. Okay, well, we'll bring it to an end. Thank you all for watching, and Tom, we'll talk together. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. And I got to get you on my channel. We'll get that.
I would love to. Yeah.
All right.
Just let me know.
All right.
See you guys. Thanks, Tom.
Later.